Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Fen Vicarage on this lovely Wednesday morning. As you can see, it's Wednesday, day off, golf day this morning. Looking forward to that. Don't know what you have planned for today, but I hope it's really, really good for you. Please hold our church in your prayers at the moment. The heating project workmen started yesterday. Really excited. Looking forward to a nice, warm church by Christmas. Looking forward to that. Much to look forward to. We are working our way through the Gospel of Mark. We're nearly halfway through, and you'll see in a couple of days' time why that's really important. There are 16 chapters in Mark, and today we're in chapter 8. If I remind you, Jesus has gone up north to a kind of the Gentile area, and he's met various people and done various things. And I'm going to read you now Mark chapter 8, just the first few verses. And as I read this, you might get something of a sense of déjà vu. We'll see. Mark chapter 8, and I'm reading verses 1 to 10. In those days, when there was again a great crowd without anything to eat, he called his disciples and said to them, I have compassion for the crowd, because they've been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way, and some of them have come a great distance. His disciples replied, How can one feed these people with bread here in the desert? He asked them, How many loaves do you have? They said, 7. And he ordered the crowd to sit on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves, and after having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples to distribute, and they distributed them to the crowd. They also had a few small fish, and after blessing them, he ordered that these too should be distributed. They ate and were filled, and they took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. Now there were about 4,000 people, and he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, as just a few moments ago, you might have got a sense of déjà vu. You might be thinking to yourself, hang on a minute, didn't Jesus do that a couple of chapters ago in chapter 6? If you thought that, you'd be absolutely right. In chapter 6, Mark records that Jesus fed 5,000 people in the desert, and here in chapter 8, we have him feeding 4,000 people in the desert. And the two incidents are very, very similar. So similar, in fact, that it's led some people to believe it's actually the same story told twice. And there are similarities. You can kind of see why both happened in the desert. Both involved Jesus, both involved a large crowd of hungry people. In both cases, he took the bread, gave thanks, broke it and gave it, and he fed a lot of people and they were satisfied, and so on. As I say, there are certain similarities, which have led some, I think, rather boring theologians to believe that actually it's the same story told twice. But I disagree. I think there were definitely two separate incidents. Firstly, because Jesus clearly thought there was. He talks later about the incidents of the 4,000 and the 5,000. Jesus clearly says that there were two separate incidents. The numbers, as I said, are different. On one occasion, he fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Another occasion, he fed 4,000 people with different numbers of bread and fish and so on. So there are some different differences there. Also, in the terminology is different. The Greek word for fish, for example, is different in the two stories. There's more detail in 5,000 details about being in the 50s on the green grass and that sort of stuff. And also in this one, in the 4,000 one, Jesus takes more of what I might call an active role. In the feeding of the 5,000, it's almost like he's responding to events around him. In the feeding of the 4,000, Jesus is much more active in deciding what goes on. So because Jesus thought they were different, Jesus said there were two different stories, and because there were sufficient differences, I'm satisfied that they were actually two different occasions. As I say, on one occasion he fed 5,000, and the other occasion he fed 4,000 people. But given that it happened twice, and Mark tells us about it twice, I suppose the question I'd like us to ask this morning is why? Why would he tell the same story? Why would Jesus do this miracle twice? Jesus did lots of miracles. And if he did, why did Mark tell us about it twice? Couldn't he have told us about Jesus' childhood instead? Or couldn't he have filled the gap with something else? Or, why did Mark think it's so important to tell these two incidents, which were so similar? Why did Mark do that? So why do we hear these two stories? What's that all about? Well, I want to give a couple of reasons why. Firstly, as has always been pointed out, the feeding of the 5,000 was done in a Jewish area, and the feeding of the 4,000 was done in a Gentile area. Again, repeating, which I've been saying a lot the last few days, is that the gospel of Jesus Christ is for the non-Jews as well as the Jews. The gospel of Jesus Christ is for everyone. And as we sit here this morning, we should be really grateful for that, because not many of us come from Jewish background, and it means actually the gospel is for us. So we can praise God for that this morning. So I think the first reason, there are two reasons I want to say why he did. One is because one was in a Gentile era, one in a Jewish era, and I think Jesus wants to make the point, and Mark wants to reinforce the point, that the gospel of Jesus Christ is for everyone, Jewish or non-Jewish. That's the first thing. But I think, and as I said, theology is always the art of stating the blindingly obvious. I think the other reason Jesus did this twice, and I think the reason Mark told us about it twice, is because it's blooming important. It's such an important miracle. I think that is why Mark told us about it twice. And I think that's why Jesus did it twice. I think he did it twice because it's an important miracle. And like primary school teachers, actually parents to do, they want to reinforce the message. And so to reinforce it, he does it twice. And Mark tells us about it twice. So what is so special about this miracle? Jesus did lots of amazing things. Why do we hear twice about him feeding large crowds in the desert? What is so special about this miracle? What's this miracle got that nothing else, no other miracles got? And I think it's this one, is this. All the other miracles, people watch, people see, people hear about it. In this miracle, the people there didn't just see it, They didn't just witness it. They didn't just hear about it. They actually ate it. They actually took it into themselves. They didn't just see Jesus do a miracle with the bread and the fish. They actually ate of it. They took it into themselves. They fed on it. They were active. It became part of them, and they became part of us. And because they actually ate it, it might be said, this miracle became part of them. You might say what Jesus did became part of them. And I think that's why it's important. They actually took part in it. They ate in it. And it reminds us actually of another time when Jesus did something similar with bread. I remember in this story, Jesus took the bread, he gave thanks to the bread, he broke the bread, and he gave the bread. And of course, another occasion when he did that was the night before he died, when he sat down with his friends and he take this and eat it. This is my body, which is given for you. On the night before he died, Jesus also took bread, gave thanks to the bread, broke the bread, and gave the bread. And as happened with the feeding of the 5,000 and the 4,000, they ate and they were satisfied. And what they were doing in that, they weren't just seeing Jesus doing something special, they were taking part in it. Whenever you do this, remember me. And the word remember is so much more than just remembering, like here's to Jesus or whatever. It's actually reliving it. It's actually having it with you and actually taking him into yourself. And I think that's what he's saying here. If this miracle, it's about not just seeing it, it's about actually taking part in it. And actually, when we do this wonderful service that we do, and every week it's called all sorts of different things. Some people call it Eucharist, which means saying thank you. Some people call it communion because it marks our communion with God. Some people at the Last Supper because what Jesus did the night before he died. Some people call it Mass, comes from esse missa est, it is finished, Jesus' words from the cross. All different aspects of it. When we do this incredible thing that we do so regularly, this wonderful liturgy, this wonderful service, this wonderful act of devotion, we don't just see it happen, we eat it, we take it into ourselves. It becomes part of us. And what we're saying is, what Jesus did, all that Jesus is, what Jesus achieved for us, Jesus' amazing work, we're not just seeing it, we're taking it into ourselves. It becomes part of us. We don't just see it, we eat it, we take part in it, we feed on it, and it feeds our souls. And as they fed and they were satisfied, it feeds us, and we are satisfied too. So, why did Jesus do this feeding twice? Why did he feed two lots of people in the desert? Partly one for Jews, one for Gentiles, that's really important. But also because it kind of reminds us it's the one miracle where people actually can really, really take part and actually feed it into themselves. And likewise, what we're doing when we do this wonderful service each week, this liturgy, this act of devotion, which we call communion, call it what you like, we don't just see it, we witness it, we feed on Jesus, and we are satisfied. Hope that makes sense. God bless you. Have a lovely day, and there'll be